Liberty and justice for all.
Thank you. You may be seated. Okay, I turn to Mrs. Roberts for the roll call, the board members.
Mrs. Conrad Zangmeister. Here. Mr. Kaufman.
Here.
Mrs. Johns. Here. Mr. Kimmer.
Here.
Mr. Smeltzer.
Here.
Okay, thank you, Mrs. Thank you, Mrs. Roberts. Sorry, I got sidetracked in the call. Mrs. Roberts, and all board members are present. So it turns us to the minutes. All board members have received the minutes. Is there a motion to approve the minutes as attached? So the move by Mr. Hoffman, will there be a second?
Second.
Okay. Question? If not, Mrs. Roberts, would you call the roll call, please?
Mr. Kaufman.
Yes.
Mr. Smeltzer.
Yes.
Mrs. Conrad Zangmeister. Yes. Mrs. Johns. Yes. Mr. Kimmer.
Yes. Motion passed unanimously. Adjustments to the agenda. I'll turn to Mr. Belleville. Any adjustments from you, sir?
Yes, sir, Mr. Kimmer, thank you. Late last night, early this morning, received an email from Holly Culver requesting to extend her leave of absence. So due to the timing of when we received that, we did not get it on the agenda on Friday, but would ask that be considered by the board this evening. So we do an adjustment to the agenda and add it as a new business item, 6.13.
6.13?
Yes, sir.
Okay. Okay, 6.13. And remind me if I happen to miss it, that's 6.13. Mrs. Roberts, any adjustments from you? Okay. Okay. Entertain a motion into adjustments to the agenda.
So moved.
And moved by Mr. Smeltzer. Would there be a second? Second by Mrs. Johns. Question? Not Ms. Roberts. Call the roll, please.
Mr. Smeltzer.
Yes.
Mrs. Johns. Yes. Mrs. Conrad Zangmeister.
Yes.
Mr. Kaufman.
Yes.
Mr. Kimmer.
Yes. Motion passed. The adjustments. Okay, then moves us into information discussion. We'll turn to 2.1 with superintendent updates. Mr. Belleville, sir.
Thank you, Mr. Kimmer. Welcome, everybody. Appreciate you being here this evening. Just a few items to touch on and go over real quick. As far as agenda items, as we go through the agenda this evening, if there's anything specific that you would like to discuss, you can definitely do so as we get there. I do want to point out that we have 5 policies for our first reading. You're going to see over the next several meetings potentially us bringing multiple policies for consideration. A lot of this is due to legislation that has passed and will be enacted into law. We're in that window of where the 90 days from the time it was passed to signed by the governor to where it goes into law. We're in the window for some of the legislation passed in the lame duck session. So we'll be bringing various policies to you for consideration over the next few meetings. But starting off with these 5, again, just a first reading, but if you have any questions or concerns after reading through those, you can contact me and we can discuss prior to the next board meeting, or again, we'll be able to discuss at the next board meeting. Also have a few coaches for consideration and volunteers. Always so appreciative of all of our paid and volunteer spots that do extra work with our student athletes or clubs and organizations and students that are involved in extracurriculars. It really is just an essential part of the overall educational experience for our kids. So extremely appreciative of the work that people put in with those type of things. You'll see agreements with Muskingum University and the Muskingum Valley ESC, and these are agreements that we've had year over year. The agreement with the Muskingum Valley ESC is for services this year. The ESC had failed to get paperwork to us to bring to the board for consideration to have signed. They switched superintendents into this school year, and so some of their paperwork kind of got lost in translation, so they're just now getting that to us. Also, you'll see a request for us to go into agreement with Harvey Marshall Berling and Associates. This is for a renovation project in the auditorium. We've talked about this a little bit over the past year. The lights in our auditorium are aging because of the time frame which the building was built. We're starting to see that it is difficult to find parts when things break and replace those. Also, a lot of the bulbs on stage are halogen-based bulbs that are not energy efficient, burn extremely hot. So we would like to change out all of the lighting on stage to LED lights. That would be a major undertaking. Really would have to gut the entire lighting system because of the age of the technology in the facility right now. So part of wanting to take on a project of that nature is just sheer updating and staying with current technology, the difficulty in finding parts when things break, the cost and expense of the lights, not only just the actual expense, but the man hours it takes to get in there, put a lift on the stage, get up and change those lights, but also the energy savings that we could realize from transitioning to LED. We're using the auditorium more frequently. We have classes in there more frequently. Mr. McPhail and our music teachers have done a great job of adding courses. We have a drama class now that's in there daily, our choirs, assembly singers, those type of things. So the facility is being used more now than it ever has been in the history of the building, and so we're seeing lights burn out more frequently. Matt Smith has done a great job and his team of keeping up with it. Like right now, they've held bulbs back, and they'll change bulbs right before the musical in the spring. Well, they hold them back and hoard them because they're afraid they won't be able to find them when they need to order new ones. So that's a real concern. We've been warned by AEP over the next year that our electric bill could go up $20,000 to $30,000. Well, not AEP, Meta has warned us that our electric bill could go up $20,000 to $30,000. And in my next point, I'm going to talk a little bit more about that. Our energy savings program that we started 7 years ago. So I'll get into that in a second, but this is kind of another layer of that. This would definitely be a move that could help us save a little bit of money off our electric bill in transitioning to LED. So we are asking that the board consider that agreement in 6.7, and we can touch on that more as we get there. So again, as we go through the agenda, if you have questions, please don't hesitate to ask. Our energy conservation program, we are in quarter 2 of year 7, kind of reminding board members where we were 7 years ago. We took on this project with, at that time, Dynamics. Dynamics is now known as Verigy. It was a $1.2 million project to transition lights across the district to LED. Also to update our controls at the time. And at the time we went out kind of a lease loan program that we'd have a 10-year plan. Payments were spread out over 10 years. Verigy/Dynamics had basically told us they would guarantee we would save enough off our electric bill to pay the yearly installment and maybe save a couple of $1,000s above that. That's what they would guarantee. They were hopeful we would experience more savings than just the $100,000 payments yearly. So we've been tracking that for 7 years. Part of part of this whole project was let's see what happens, and hopefully we do save the money. I've attached in the board agenda our year 7 quarter 2 update. The first thing I want to point out, and this comes from Meta, is we receive a grade for our utilities and our usage of energy, that's gas and electric. And right now our district is an A+ rated school district for energy conservation. We are one of the few districts in the state that receives an A+ rating from what I've been told from Meta. So an A+ means that we're as efficient, just about as efficient as you could possibly be. When you look at how they've determined savings, what they did the year before we started the project, they looked at all of our energy bills for the entire year, what we spent on electricity, what we spent on gas, and that was the baseline. That's what you spent the year prior to starting the project. Every year after that, they look at our energy consumption and what we're spending on electricity and compare it to that baseline cost before we transition to LED and all those type of things. So they're comparing what we're spending now versus what we spent the year before we started the project. Now we know in that time rates have gone up significantly, so it's really not the best comparison because the rates of what we were paying for electric and gas 8 years ago are vastly different than they are now. So even any savings at all, you know it's probably even greater savings if we were still using the same rates as 8 years ago. But very happy, very proud to announce through 6 years and 2 quarters, we have saved $1.45 million off of that baseline cost over 7 years ago. In year 6, we saw our savings dip to the lowest point ever. And that was also kind of what spurred all the conversation about new chillers. You know, we're seeing our chillers fail. Are they as energy efficient as possible? Our controls, again, needed to be updated. So, you know, as the board well knows, this summer we updated chillers. We updated our controls. And through 2 quarters this year, we're at $114,000 savings. That projects out, if we continue this trend, to $228,000, almost $229,000 in savings in year 7, which would be would be about the 3rd best year out of the 7 years. So we're seeing things trend back to where we wanted them to be in terms of savings. So we're extremely happy about that. You know, out of the 10-year loan program, obviously years 8, 9, and 10 at this point, and the rest of year 7 are all going to be positive cash flows compared to, you know, we will have saved enough to pay off the original loan amount of $1.2 million. So really excited to share that, you know, that project turned out so well. And I think if we transition the lights in the auditorium to LED, that's just going to be another little layer of this that is another potential savings. So really excited about that and continue to monitor it, and just want to publicly thank Verigy and Dynamics, Gary Montgomery and his team for all they've done for us over the years and the help, and they've been good partners for the district. Also want to update board members. We did send out communication to the community about remote learning days. You know, it's been a tough winter for our community, for our parents and families. It's been tough on our staff. You know, kind of lost in calamity days is, you know, when you have teachers that are really worried about student performances on end of course exams, on AP exams, ACT exams, all those things are hitting us. We're into testing season now. We have ACT exams happening this week at the high school. You know, so when there are a lot of calamity days, it really does impact our entire school community, and that's been difficult to manage. But I'm really proud of the teamwork that we put into creating the school calendar every year. For grades K through 6, schools have to be in session 910 hours for the year. For grades 7 through 12, it's 1,001 hours for it to count as a school year. And even with all of the calamity days and delays that we've had, we are still comfortably above those state minimums. When you look at makeup time, it's just as much for the loss of instructional time and our teachers wanting to be in front of their students to help them as they prepare for state testing and all those things that come throughout the year. The makeup days are just as much for that as anything. Looking at our plan, March 21st is a professional development day for our staff, so staff will be here. So there is thought you go ahead and bring kids in that day, but there's no way around it. There are a lot of state mandated pieces of legislation that were passed in the lame duck that we need to educate our staff on, procedurally things that are going to have to change, that we want to give those updates to our staff. So I really need the time in front of our staff on March 21st, and it's impossible to do that with students here. So that kind of eliminated that day as bringing students in. But we wanted opportunities to at least present a way for our teachers to be able to have students review content that's already been presented and serve as a preparation for testing here at the end of the year. So ultimately made the decision on March 21st and April 21st to do remote learning. We all fully understand and readily admit that remote learning is nowhere near as good as in-person education, but we also want to do everything that we can do to try to maximize every minute that we can throughout the school year. I personally think adding days on at the end of the school year are not great. It's a challenge just because once testing's over and you're at the end of the year, students are not focused and ready to go, and it makes learning difficult. So we will do that March 21st, April 21st. During the professional development day on March 21st, I would invite board members to join us if you're free at 7:30 in the morning. We'll be in the auditorium at the high school, and you can catch some of those legislative updates that I'll be passing to the staff. So that'd be March 21st at 7:30 in the morning. If you're free and you're able to join us a little bit, that would be fantastic. Outside of that, are there any other questions? Mr. Kimmer, I am going to step out just for a second,
Okay.
and I'll be back.
Okay. All right. Thank you, Mr. Belleville. Thank you for those updates. Appreciate the superintendent's updates. That does move us on into 2.2 policy revisions and first reading. Board members, if you do have an opportunity to look at that first reading and the policy of those 5, if you have any questions, as Mr. Belleville did comment, to notify him. So, okay.
Mr. Kimmer, just
Yes,
one
yes,
thing on
yes,
some of those
indeed.
policies. You'll
Yes.
see that in a few of the policies, specifically in
Yes.
inventories and then also in bidding,
Okay.
some of the dollar figures are actually changing. This is one of the
Oh.
things that with increase of prices, the state has come back and they've actually increased the limits that we would have to go either out to bid for services and then also for our inventory. So inventory is going from, it's currently sitting at $5,000 per item. So per
Okay.
item that we buy, whether or not it has to go into our capital, that's moving from 5 to 10, partially just to account for inflation. And then bidding is going from 50 to 75,000. So again, just allowing for that. They have not been updated in quite a while. So that's where, now that we are from the state allowed to do that, we would like to see the bidding. That's where those dollar figures are coming into play. And just kind of allowing us to move some of those numbers.
Okay. Thanks, Mrs. Roberts, for insight in some regard of some of those policy first readings. Thank you. Okay. Other thoughts, comments? We'll move into recognition of visitors. Public comment. I don't think no one. Mrs. Conrad, okay. No one signed in, so then that we'll move on to reports and presentations, and we'll turn to our administrators. It's always something forward that us board members truly look forward to is your updates, and not just for us here as board members, but for us of live streaming as well, for the people that are tuning in, that for your updates as well. So we'll turn to Mrs. Hahn as she is first presenter. Mrs. Hahn, please.
Good evening. I just want to, I've broken down my presentation to a few different areas. First of all, with curriculum and instruction, we are continuing, of course, to implement the science of reading across our grade levels of the middle school. Just to give you an example, so each grade level has essentially 2 English language arts and reading classes every day. So, for example, 8th grade currently right now, in one of those classes they're studying Romeo and Juliet, and in the other class they are studying the Holocaust. And so just in that example you can see just the differences and the diversity in the curriculum itself. 7th grade, they just finished up studying about Edgar Allan Poe in one of those classes, and in the other class they are researching information about the gold rush. So just very diverse topics that the students are learning about. And then our building leadership team met earlier this month, and we just kind of talked about how we are going to continue this implementation throughout the building over the next 2 to 3 years, and how we can make sure that all teachers are involved in supporting instructional strategies for science of reading, whether that's a science or a social studies class or an elective. What types of vocabulary strategies and different reading comprehension strategies can they utilize to help support what we're doing in literacy. Under testing, our 7th graders all took the Iowa Algebra Readiness Assessment last week. That is a measure of assessment that we use as just one of our data points to determine which 7th grade students are going to be best suited for 8th grade Algebra 1. So it's a very important test that we give, and so that was taken care of last week. This week, Mrs. Schilling is actually administering the Torrance assessment. That is an assessment that's given to some of our 5th graders. In 4th grade, they were tested. Some of those students tested pretty high, and so then they're retested in 5th grade to determine whether they would qualify under that creative thinking category for gifted. And then next week, our 6th graders will be taking the Iowa assessment test, and that is going to assess whether they would be identified in reading, math, science, or social studies. So they are tested in 2nd, 4th, and 6th grade, so this is a whole battery of tests that they take to test for all of those different areas. Our Power of the Pen team competed at the district level with 19 other teams. Our 7th grade team earned a 3rd place finish. Our 8th grade team earned a 2nd place finish. We have several qualifiers who are going to be going back to regionals on March 7th at OUL. So that's always a great competition for our students. In PBIS, we celebrated the end of our 2nd quarter last month, and we had our 2nd Falcon Brunch of the year as well. We had over 100 people here in each one of those sessions for 5th and 6th grade and 7th and 8th grades. And those students who consistently follow our Falcon 5 characteristics, those are the students that teachers recommend for those accomplishments. Earlier this month, we had Fairfield County, some of their deputies come out and present information to our students about cyber safety. Each grade level came into the cafeteria at 4 different times throughout the day, and those deputies presented information about, like I said, cyber safety, how they can keep themselves safe when researching or doing different things on the web. And then later on that week, our counselors went out into the classrooms and also presented some lessons from our Common Sense curriculum, which again teaches students how to safeguard themselves when they are on the computer and using their Chromebooks. We honored our 7th and our 8th grade student athletes a few weeks ago with a pep rally. Prior to them going into tournaments, our boys and girls basketball teams had a really successful season this year. I'm super excited. I've been telling the high school that, you know, we've got some really great athletes, some great teams coming up to them soon, so they should be excited about that. Our wrestlers actually brought home the MSL championship trophy, so great wrestlers coming up to the high school here just in a couple of years as well. So congratulations to all of our winter athletes. Spring sports are underway. We had a ton of kids stay today for track, so that's encouraging. Our track team always does really well. Boys and girls softball and baseball. So we're looking forward to a lot of sunny, warm days here in the near future to have all of those track meets and baseball and softball games. And then finally, Mr. Funk, who takes care of our scheduling for next year, but that's where we are right now. Is, you know, March is right around the corner. So he has scheduled dates next month to go into our 5th grade, 6th grade, 7th grade to talk to the kids about scheduling for next year. He's also communicated with Pleasantville and Bremen about going to 4th grade as well to talk to them about scheduling for 5th grade. So things are rolling, and we are, you know, getting prepared for even next year as we're kind of like getting towards the end of this year. But, you know, we're excited for everything that's going to be coming up here soon and just planning ahead for next year as well.
Great.
Thank you.
Westfield Middle School Principal, Mrs. Hahn, thank you. Okay, turn to the high school principal, Mr. Matt McPhail. Mr. McPhail, please, sir.
Thank you. You know, when you prepare for these reports to the board, it's always a challenge because, you know, you're trying to find what to cover, how much to cover, kind of what groups to highlight. It's just, as I'm sitting here listening to Mrs. Hahn and just kind of thinking about all of the things that go on in all the schools in the district, but, you know, from our perspective at the high school, you know, each level has a role. And, you know, by the time they get up to be the young adults that they are at the high school, every single one of those students, 600 some odd students at the high school, all have their own big goals and aspirations. They're all super talented in their own ways, and it's really a busy time right now. It's always a busy time, but you know, this time of year, it's just, you know, you're rounding out the winter, you're getting ready to go into the testing season, and our teachers get geared up for that, and so do our students. And so it's just impossible to cover it all to the level that it really deserves to be covered. But it's just, it's you know, I say it all the time. It's really enjoyable to be able to watch them do their thing, the staff and students. So I'm going to run through some highlights here, kind of across the board. I'll start with athletics. We have had another really good winter sports season. We hope that it's not quite over yet. So I'm just going to kind of run through each of our sports here and give you their stats. Swimming season is over. The swim team had the best year they've had. You know, that program has grown. It started out, I don't know, probably 8-10 years ago or so as a club. It's evolved into a recognized sport now, and the success has come with that. Participation numbers have continued to go up. But our boys won the Mid-State League Championship. Our girls finished second in the Mid-State League. When they swam at the district level, quite a few of our athletes had personal bests in that district meets. That's all you can ask of. You know, they win the league, they're continuing to get better, the program's continuing to grow, and those athletes are continuing to hit personal best, which is in a sport like swim, track, cross country, that's always part of the equation. So good things happening with the swim program. The gymnastics team, which is a club, of course, but you know, we have I think we have 6 gymnasts. They're all underclassmen. They had 2 second place finishes this year in their first year, and they finished 15th in the district with it, which I think is very respectable. And again, they're all back, and so you know, we'll be excited to see them pursue those opportunities as well. Wrestling team just finished the sectional last weekend. We had 6 athletes qualify for the district tournament. Just very quickly, that's Colton Bora, AJ Bowers, Keaton Castle, Abram Cottrell, Lane Farmer, and Braxton Linhart. District tournament is in Steubenville. It's February 28th and March 1st. Yeah, I know, it's a ways away, travel-wise. So that brings us to boys and girls basketball. Banner years, both seasons are still underway. Our boys finished third in the Mid-State League. They play tomorrow night in the district semifinal versus Junioto. That game is at Southeastern High School. It's at 8:30 tomorrow night. If they win that game, the district championship for the boys would be Thursday evening, 8 p.m. in Convo at the Convocation Center in Athens. And let me check my notes here to see. We would play the winner of Jackson and Waverly. So talked to Coach before I came over. They had a good practice, so we're anxious to see them be successful tomorrow night. On the girls' side, of course, our girls' basketball team is 25-0. They're having an all-time great year. Really fun to watch that bunch play. They play extremely hard. They won the league, of course. So they're playing in the regional semifinal tomorrow evening. That game is at Zanesville High School, Indian Creek. And again, I think I said that game is at 8 o'clock tomorrow evening. Now, I want to address one issue here that you may or may not have been asked about in the community. This is something that's unfortunate and frankly that I'm really disappointed with. We saw a couple of weeks ago the potential in the brackets for the conflict that we're faced with tomorrow evening. And Mr. Harris, about 2 weeks ago, reached out to the Southeast District Athletic Board, pointed out our concern that we potentially have this scenario where we have a regional semi and a district semi on the same night. And wanted to get some help with that if that came to pass. Unfortunately, the Southeast District didn't see their way to make an accommodation for that. So that puts our community and our students in a bad situation, and it is very disappointing to me. You know, we feel like cooperation and common sense goes a long way in those kinds of scenarios, and I'm unhappy that we're in this situation. But we'll make the best of it and make it a positive. Hopefully both those teams will win tomorrow night, and then the boys will play, if they win again, on Thursday, and then the girls would play. The regional championship would be Friday evening. That'd be back at Zanesville High School. So, but I did want to point that out. If somebody does have a question, to make matters worse, there were two scenarios. One of them involved one of our league schools in the Central District. Same scenario, and the Central District accommodated the change. So our community may be asking questions about, well, why was that way? And then, you know, those are district athletic board's decision that, you know, we can ask, but ultimately they make that decision for us. So just FYI on that. And then lastly, in athletics, you know, our spring sport parent meeting is coming up here on March the 3rd, and that's at 6:30 p.m. The music department is extremely busy right now as well. First thing we've got going, we're excited about. We've got this new relationship with Muskingum University, kind of across the board. And we've got some students that are attending Muskingum University that are participating in their music programs. And they're taking a little tour, both band and choir. So next Thursday, March the 6th, they'll be at the high school in the morning. And they're going to do about an hour-long kind of a combined band and choir concert for our students. We're going to do it in the gym since the stage is set up for the musical. But we're excited about that. That's what we hope is the first of many. And having some conversations, our music staff is excited to collaborate with them. So they're talking about maybe trying to put something together next fall to be able to bring some students from Muskingum University in and kind of work with our kids and get some collaboration going with that department over there as well. So that'll be on March the 6th. On March the 8th then, Saturday of next week, a week from this Saturday, both all three of our choral groups and our symphonic band will be competing in the OMEA large group competitions. Band's going to be at Tays Valley High School, and the choirs will be at Upper Arlington High School. And so we have 6 students that do both. So they're working out the logistics so they can get from Tays to Upper Arlington and participate in that. So we're looking forward to that. If you want to make note, the assembly singers at Upper Arlington are at 11:45, the men's ensemble at 1:45, and the women's ensemble at 2:15. We do not have a start time for the band yet, so they're working on that. And then Lastly, and obviously kind of the crown jewel, the thing that the community looks forward to, is the musical. And so the musical is the 20th, 21st, and 22nd. And that's Shrek. So I can just tell you that the kids are really excited about this. I think they feel like that this is going to be a really good production. So I'm excited to see that performance. This is, the weather goddess as far as winter homecoming is concerned, so we rescheduled the winter homecoming festivities. So this is winter homecoming week, Spirit Week, if you will, and then that'll culminate this Saturday night with the winter homecoming dance. Just a quick update, we've got the Hope Squad that is our new organization. That's really starting to get some good footing. We've kind of grown into the organization and structure of that, and done some things to streamline the communication between the kids and the advisors. I think that's working out really, really well. Our kids are really excited about this. It's a really good group of about 25 students, 5 staff members, and they're really doing some nice things. The 2 biggest things in the near future, we are planning some students to go out into our 2 elementaries and our middle school to just talk about the stigma associated with just advocating for yourself as a young person. It's so hard sometimes for a young person to feel like that it's okay to ask for help or tell somebody, a friend or an adult, that, I'm not feeling right. And so, clearly that's a message that has to be crafted carefully, depending on the age group. But our students, our high school students, really were pretty passionate that they felt like this is something that they wanted to kind of lead into those lower levels with. So we'll be getting out into those buildings. Our Hope Squad advisors are working with the middle school, elementary principals to get the logistics of that all finalized. And the second thing that just came on the radar here in the last couple of days, there's a group, first responders, firefighters, it's called the Phoenix Project. The Phoenix Project is a mental health outreach in those realms. The toll that those jobs take on families, the stress, the danger that's just embedded into those jobs, and what impact that has on siblings, or not siblings, excuse me, but children and wives and husbands. And so the Phoenix Project is, it's kind of a one-day, they have keynote speakers, but then they also have booths set up for various agencies and mental health groups. They have reached out to our Hope Squad organization, we do have a connection, and asked us if we would man a booth to just kind of talk about the Hope Squad, what it is. Ours isn't the only one in Central Ohio, but we're going to have an opportunity to do that if we can get the logistics worked out. It's in Canal Winchester. So again, that's just another way for our kids to advocate in that area. So big things happening there. And then lastly, in terms of academics, it is, as Mr. Belville alluded to, we are headed into our testing time. And our teachers work really hard to get our students ready to be successful in this. Not about teaching to the test, but what it is about is just trying to help our students be successful on the things that are going to be the metrics that they need for whether they're going to go to college or whatever workforce area they want to go into. So we'll do ACT testing this week with our juniors. Every junior in the state of Ohio takes the ACT. So we'll get that taken care of this week, and then we'll follow that up a little later in March the 11th, with our sophomores and seniors taking the ACT in the building as well. End of course exams, April 7th to April 17th. Not every day, but most every day will be either a test or makeup time for students that miss those tests. And then we'll go right into web exams after that, roll that right into early May with AP exams, and then right before the end of the school year, we'll do a round of makeup tests with web exams. So really from right now until we finish at the end of the school year, there's going to be some type of testing going on at the high school. We're in the middle in the district right now of doing our work to prepare for the next 3 years of what we're going to kind of emphasize and focus in on academically, that being a big push through science of reading for literacy. And so, you know, we just had a day-long planning session at the high school with our BLT, and really a good day of collaboration, and it was a full day. Put a comprehensive plan together to address our literacy needs and where we think we can get the biggest bang for our buck, and that would be cross-curricular in every single content area, from English to ag to family consumer science. We will be addressing literacy in all of those areas in some way, shape, or form. And then, of course, our ongoing work with the use of data to inform our instruction and helping our teachers get better at being able to do that and use it in meaningful ways, and then wrapped around the third area, which is our PBIS program. That's when we get into all the culture stuff to make it all kind of come together. So real excited about that in the coming year. Scheduling wise, and I am going to wrap this up quickly here, but scheduling wise, we're very ambitious with our CCP outlook through our relationship with Muskingum to the tune of potentially 13 new CCP classes, mostly in our core areas, but 2 in ag. If we can get the approvals, and we're starting to get those, so far it's been yeses for all the staff members that we need to get the approvals on. If we can get the approvals, we'll be teaching at least 1 CCP class in the building in every single area, at least 1, plus the educational build your own pathway to kind of help us down the road, fill teaching positions on the long play. And really the only 2 areas left in the building then that we wouldn't have CCP classes would be family consumer science, and then we would still be working on music to get that implemented. So we're really excited about what the implication is, because we've talked about it many times. It keeps students in the building. You know, we want to keep students in the building and give them an opportunity to get what they need here rather than off campus. And then lastly, I just in the CTE world, Mr. Hoffman would know this, that all of our CTE groups have to have a community advisory group that helps work with them so that our CTE programs are meeting the needs of the industries that they serve. And our teachers in those organizations are pulling together a large meeting of their comprehensive groups on Wednesday evening. And we're going to start all together as one large group, kind of lay out a little bit of our vision as to where we want to see things go, and then they're going to break off into their individual, ag, business, and family consumer science to do their work that's specific to their area. So I just wanted to give a shout out to our CTE teachers, because that's a heavy lift to put all that together and get it ready to go. So.
Okay. Yes.
I'd just like to say a quick note about what Mr. McPhail had said about going back to the Southeast District, that both, on one same night, and that they wouldn't work with us, but then the Central District works with one of our friends and does. So I hope that we are sending a message that we're very disappointed in that to the Southeast District Board.
Mr. Schmelzer, I assure you that we will.
Okay. Thank you.
And Ms.
Well, I just
Conrad.
wanted to congratulate the girls on their district championship. That's just phenomenal.
Yes.
Contribution, that's just wow.
And-
Has ever been done?
There have been a couple. I think this is the third,
And undefeated?
but never undefeated. Yeah, never undefeated.
When did they go to the state over Coach Burke?
99.
Yeah.
And then we had a group. I'm going to be within a couple of years, like 11, 12, 13 in that range. There was a girls team that played in the regional championship that got me.
Mr. McVeigh, also appreciate the insight with the Phoenix project. Appreciate that insight as well. So, our high school principal, Mr. McVeigh, appreciate the insight. Thank you, sir. Okay, that turns us to our Bremen Elementary principal, Mr. Knott, sir.
Well, who would have known that Cotton Eye Joe would be the first thing I would talk to you about? But that was the most popular dance from the dads, the dance that we had early on. It was very much what you would expect to see, all the little girls kind of dance together in groups as if the dad's kind of standing around it. Unless it was a slow, dad car dance. And all of a sudden that song came on, and those dads were out there with the girl. It was a fun time. So the dance went very well attended. Kids were well behaved. Shout out to the high school kids, great help there as well. Equally fun was our Valentine party that we had. We always have a great turnout for that. I'm always so impressed with the families that work on those Valentine boxes. Makes me think as a dad, I just add stickers to one of mine and say, oh, let's, yay! I definitely dropped the ball there, but they always do. It's just fun to see their creativity and what they'll come up with. And I'm always helping someone carry something in that day, so it's always fun. Kindergarten registration. It is open. Sandy was working on that today, so we're excited about that. So far, I think we had 13 when I counted today, and 11 of the 13 have their sibling in the building. So that's always fun. That's a fun connection. There's some of them I remember coming up, so finally they're there with us. They'll be with us next year. So not so fun. Mother Nature has made gift testing dragged out for quite some time. We are to the point where we're just 2 makeups. I did some myself this afternoon, and so we have just 2 or 3 kiddos who are finally feeling better, and they're back to us, and we'll get caught up hopefully by the end of the week. So that has been the kind of the of all this. We'll get there. March 6th, grades 1 and 2 music program. Mrs. Burnworth, as you know, always does a fantastic job with that. So if you can join us, please do. Spring conferences, we're doing all that kind of behind the scenes stuff, getting organized, talking to families, scheduling everything, scheduling with other, you have an older sibling, kind of those things, making sure we're on the same page there. Those are March 18th and March 20th. That's conferences there. And then we have a magician coming to Bremen on the 17th. So I thought in between conferences, let's do a little bit of something fun, so we have a magician. He's the first time ever coming to our building, so fingers crossed that it goes well. Both buildings, one of the things we've asked the teachers to do at this point, they've had over a semester of the new curriculum, right? And so it's, okay, every curriculum, no matter what curriculum you purchase, there's something that you feel is lacking, that they don't have enough of. I feel like collectively we're feeling like writing might be one of those at the elementary for CKLA. So what we challenged the grade levels to do was to take a look at their current unit that they're teaching, looking at some writing resources and pulling in something and coming up with kind of a teacher design writing task that kind of goes along with it. Not surprising, both buildings have done an excellent job. We had some real cute, fun things. We've had some narrative writing, we've had informative essays, we've had some research going on in 3rd grade. It's been really nice to see kindergarten completed a writing assignment at both buildings. If they rolled the school, what they would do. So that was just fun to read their ideas and things like that. 4th grade at Bremen, they were doing part of their CKL about myths, so they wrote their own myth. It was just a fun way to see that we could use our curriculum as our anchor, our stories, our assessments, but yet allow those teachers to be creative, and the great results that we got from the students because we did those things. So that's always fun there too. I also want to give a shout out to the teachers. It is hard. You're teaching Monday, you're out Tuesday, Mother Nature's not, and they have consistently tried really hard to make sure they're prioritizing what needs to be prioritized, like kind of letting go of something if it was something that wasn't crucial. Particularly shout out to grade 2 and 4 with the gifted testing and making those adjustments on the fly. They've done an excellent job. And I had 2 parents actually the joke is we're thinking this would be a full week, right? And 2 parents said to me this one, even on the snow days, the teachers were still reaching out, checking in on things. One was a nil kid, another was about an assignment, things like that. So again, just a little glimpse into the world of the teacher and how thankful we are to have. Thank you.
Okay, Mr. Notter, Bremen Elementary Principal, thank you for the insight. Appreciate it a lot. All right, let's turn us to Mrs. Tokars, our Pleasantville Elementary School Principal. Mrs. Tokars, please.
Good evening.
Good evening.
So a few building highlights from Pleasantville. On February 6th, Mrs. Burnworth had 14 students represent Fairfield Union in the ONEA All-State Children's Choir. 3 of those students were from Pleasantville. Our kids attended practices this winter and spent 8 hours rehearsing the day of the performance. It was amazing. We are so fortunate to have Carrie for instilling a love for music in our students. Kindergarten just recently hosted a royal ball to end their CKLA Kings and Queens unit. You may have seen pictures of our kindergarten queens, our teachers, on social media. They had a fun day getting dressed up for that. First grade students have been very busy learning about the solar system in CKLA. They learned about the phases of the moon and used Oreos to demonstrate their understanding. Second grade has been collecting Valentines all month from across the United States, so thank you for everyone who participated. Thank you, Mrs. Johns. I know you helped share that. Students were tracking which states their Valentines came from. We collected over 176 Valentines, so it's pretty awesome. If you get a chance to walk through the building up in the second grade hallway, you can see them all.
How many states?
Almost all of them. I think we had 3 states we didn't get. Third grade students are fully immersed in mastering fractions, a critical foundation for their future math success. Teachers have been engaging students with hands-on activities, visual models, and real-world applications. Our fourth graders have been busy exploring Earth's layers, rock types, plate tectonics, and natural disasters in their CKLA geology unit, deepening their understanding of the forces that shape our planet. For our building focus, we are also wrapping up gifted testing for our second and fourth graders, ensuring that we can support all of our advanced learners. We are also to all of our makeups. Finally made it through. It was a long month to get through that testing. Again, I'm just so thankful for all of our building support who has helped us get there. Our building level team also recently met last week to collaborate on our Building 1 plan in alignment with the state of Ohio's guidelines. The 1 plan is a strategic framework to support continuous improvement in student success through data-driven decision-making. We had great discussions with our rising teacher leaders. Some upcoming events that you might want to mark. On Monday, this coming Monday, March 3rd, our first and second grade music program will take place under the sea. That begins at 6 o'clock. On March 4th, we have our first grade Grandparents' Day at 2 p.m. On March 6th, we have our breakfast club with PTO, and that's for preschool through second grade. That starts at 7:30. We cordially invite all of you to attend any of these events we have going on. We would love to have you in our building. March 7th is breakfast club for third and fourth graders. That's at 7:30. And March 11th, we have second grade Grandparents' Day at 2 p.m. And then, of course, parent-teacher conferences at the end of the month. And we are also welcoming our new kindergartners. I think we've had almost 20 sign up, so that's encouraging. A huge thank you to our PTO for providing an incredible third quarter learning opportunity for our students. Last Friday, the Jump Rope Warrior visited Pleasantville, delivering 2 engaging assemblies and grade level workshops. Now every student at Pleasantville is excited about jumping rope, and they all want to do it at recess. You might have seen him on the national news just recently. He actually saved a child who fell through the ice with the jump rope out of his backpack. This was just on national news, and then he came to our school the next week. He's from Indianapolis, so that was very exciting. Lastly, I just want to extend my gratitude to Deputy Bennington for stepping in for Deputy Dixon. We all wish Jeff a speedy recovery. He is missed. The kids miss him daily. He is still working from home, even after heart surgery, sending his daily weather report at 10 a.m. But we are incredibly grateful for Mark's presence and support at our building. Mrs. Hahn, thank you for sharing him with us. We appreciate it. We won't steal him forever. We promise. I know you do.
Although we love Mr. Rary too.
I know. We're just so thankful for all our school resource officers. They're all amazing.
Okay. Mrs. Tookor, thank you. Our Pleasantville Elementary Principal. We appreciate it.
Thank you.
Administrators, like I said, we're going to move on with our business part of the meeting as well, but it won't be disrespectful. You need to step away and so appreciate your insight, and but it sure won't be disrespectful to step away when you need to get home. Okay? Thank you. Okay, that does move us to consent agenda section, and go to 5.1, which is workshops and conferences. Turn to Mr. Belville with any comments.
These are all pretty straightforward. These are conferences we've done in the past, except for Mr. Turnbull's, and that is just a special education workshop so he can stay up to date on recent law changes and things of that nature.
Okay. Okay. Okay, Mrs. Roberts. Okay. Mrs. Roberts, all right. 5.2 then. Go on to 5.2 with financial items. I'll turn to Mrs. Roberts, please.
Okay, so 3 items for this evening. I'm going to start with our financial summary. The first, digging into revenues. We have received just under $19 million so far through the month of January. I know we're at our second February board meeting, but just due to the timing of the last board meeting, we're just now presenting January. So through January, just under $19 million of revenue compared to $17 million last year. So it is up 10%. You will see that our property taxes, as well as, actually we're up really across the board. Property taxes are up about 20%, income taxes up 2%, and then you will see state grants up 11%. This is really due to that CEP funding, due to the additional funding we were getting through taking, having all of our students receive free breakfast and free lunch. If we look at expenditures, we're at $15.8 million compared to $13.8 million. A few things to note here. A big change is in our salaries and benefits. 2 things that we've been talking about. One is all the ESSER salaries came back to general fund. And then the other thing just to note is this is just a timing because we had 3 pays in the month of January, and that 3 pays didn't hit until March last year. So we're essentially 1 pay ahead. So that's one full pay cycle that we're ahead this year. That once we get through March, we'll be back apples to apples for pay. Other call-outs are very similar to what we have been calling out kind of month after month. So continuing to watch those, but no major call-outs. If we jump to our cash balance, we ended the month at $20,424,000 compared to $20,577,000. We are down 1% to last year, but we're really in line. And if you take that pay into account, we would actually be up still to last year. So still on track to where we're forecasting to end the year at about $22 million. Any questions on the financial piece of this? Okay. I will jump into the insurance report. Happy to say that not a lot of new information in insurance, which is good because we have been coming in month after month really talking about claims. Our revenue for the year in health insurance is just under $3 million compared to 2.9 last year. Expenditures are up 15% to last year, but we had a decent month in January. So January was a little bit, back down to where an average month. I know I came in here talking about how high December was. So January is starting to come back down. We have gone through our first round of the renewals for next year, so stay tuned on that. Still very early to talk through that, but really starting to work. We had some full-day meetings with UHC last week, and then just working with our consultants and everything to look at rates and so forward. However, that being said, we are still at a good cash balance. We're at $3.9 million compared to 3.5 last year. We are negative for the total year, meaning that we have spent more than we've brought in by about $70,000. But hopefully we'll have some good months of claims coming up. So continue to watch that. Dental insurance, not a lot of new news. Very similar to what we've been talking through. We're sitting at $238,000 compared to $219,000, so up 9%. Really right in line with where we need to be for a dental insurance plan. So no major call-outs for dental insurance. Any questions on insurance? Okay. The only other item in financial items is number 3. This is basically just a then and now. It was a mix-up on what team was doing the purchase order, but we are required to call this out, so it's just a then and now that we have to get board approved. That's it.
Okay. Thoughts to Mrs. Roberts? If not, we'll move us into 5.3, the approval of the consent agenda.
Make the motion.
Okay. We moved by Mrs. Conrad Zangmeister. I'll second that. Question? Not. Turn to Mrs. Roberts for the roll. Roll call, please.
Mrs. Conrad Zangmeister.
Yes.
Mr. Kim
Yes.
Mr. Hoffman?
Yes.
Mrs. Johns? Yes. Mr. Smelter?
Yes.
Motion passed unanimously. All right, moves us into new business section. 6.1, resignation of, 6.1, motion to approve the resignation of Heath Grubb as assistant maintenance at Beekman Elementary School effective February 22nd, 2025.
Just recommend we approve.
Okay. Entertain a motion? Okay. Been moved by Mrs. Johns. Would there be a second? Second by Mr. Hoffman. Any question? Question, turn to Mrs. Roberts for the roll, please.
Mrs. Johns? Yes. Mr. Hoffman?
Yes.
Mrs. Conrad Dingmeister?
Yes.
Mr. Kimmer?
Yes.
Mr. Smelter?
Yes.
Motion passed unanimously. This is on 6.2, personal service supplemental contract. Motion to approve personal service contract as presented.
Mr. Myers and for head track boys, we have already approved Coach Myers for girls, and Christie just forgot that in the new negotiated agreement, we had split to where there's a head coach for boys and a head coach for girls. Historically, it always just been one supplemental. So she put one on there last meeting, and I didn't catch it either, so this is just following up on that. There are 2 head coaching positions, one for boys, one for girls. And then, again, in the new negotiated agreement, we are awarding a supplemental for indoor track, and Coach Myers would like for Nate Fisher to have that. So, Mr. Fisher teaches at the high school and volunteers with cross country and track, and he will be the paid position.
Any motion? Okay, been moved by Mrs. Conrad Zangmeister. I'll second that. Any question? A question, I'll turn to the roll. Call Mrs. Roberts, call the roll, please.
Mrs. Conrad Dingmeister?
Yes.
Mr. Kimmer?
Yes.
Mr. Hoffman?
Yes.
Mrs. Johns? Yes. Mr. Smelter?
Yes.
Okay, motion passed unanimously. Moves on 6.3, volunteers. Motion to approve the volunteers as presented.
Incredible group of people.
Okay, been moved by Mr. Hoffman. Would there be a second? Second by Mr. Smeltzer. Question. No question. I'll turn to Mrs. Roberts for the roll call, please.
Mr. Hoffman?
Yes.
Mr. Smelter?
Yes.
Mrs. Conrad Dingmeister?
Yes.
Mrs. Johns? Yes. Mr. Kimmer?
Yes. Motion passed unanimously. Moves on 6.4, the substitute teacher list. Motion to approve the substitute teacher list as presented.
So moved.
Been moved by Mr. Smelter. Would there be a second?
I'll second.
Second by Mrs. John. Question. Question. I turn to Mrs. Roberts for the roll, please.
Mr. Smelter?
Yes.
Mrs. Johns? Yes. Mrs. Conrad Dingmeister?
Yes.
Mr. Hoffman?
Yes.
Mr. Kimmer?
Yes. Motion passed unanimously. 6.5, substitute classified list. Motion to approve the substitute classified list as presented. Been moved by Mrs. Conrad Zangmeister. I'll second that. Question. The question, I turn to Mrs. Roberts for the roll, please.
Mrs. Conrad Dingmeister?
Yes.
Mr. Kimmer?
Yes.
Mr. Hoffman?
Yes.
Mrs. Johns? Yes. Mr. Smelter?
Yes.
Motion passed unanimously. 6.6, educational trip with Mrs. Carrie Kissler. Motion to approve the Carrie Kissler to take the 3rd grade students to Kusai on May 12, 2025. Comments?
This is a trip that they've taken.
Taking the past. Okay. Entertain a motion.
So moved.
Been moved by Mr. Hoffman. Would there be a second?
I'll second.
Second by Mrs. John. Question. The question, I turn to Mrs. Roberts for the roll, please.
Mr. Hoffman?
Yes.
Mrs. Johns? Yes. Mrs. Conrad Dingmeister?
Yes.
Mr. Kimmer?
Yes.
Mr. Smelter?
Yes.
Motion passed unanimously. 6.7, agreements with Harvey Marshall Berlin Associates. A motion to approve the agreement with Harvey Marshall Berlin Associates for design services and construction administrative services for the high school theater renovation project at a cost of $37,000.
This is for design fees, and they'll run the bidding process for us for the actual construction work to be done, the architectural designing and all those type of things. Harvey Marshall Burling and Associates, their main office headquarters out of New York City. They have an office in, I believe it's Fort Mitchell, Kentucky, or Northern Kentucky, right outside Cincinnati. And some of their clients include the Kennedy Center, so I mean, they're pretty good at what they do. So they were recommended to us by SHP and MCS, who were working on our master facilities plan. So met with them a couple times and been on campus to look at our facilities and start kind of thinking about what they would recommend as far as information.
Okay. Thank you. Entertain a motion. Been moved by Mrs. Conrad Zangmeister. I'll second that. Question. The question, I turn to Mrs. Roberts for the roll call, please.
Mrs. Conrad Zangmeister. Yes. Mr. Kimmer.
Yes.
Mr. Hoffman.
Yes.
Mrs. Johns. Yes. Mr. Smeltzer.
Yes.
Motion passed unanimously. This is on 6.8 with an agreement. Motion to approve the agreement with Muskingum University for field experience and student teaching internship.
We have these agreements with multiple universities. So pretty standard.
Thank you, Mr. Belville.
So moved.
Been moved by Mr. Smeltzer. Would there be a second? Second by Mrs. Johns. Question. The question, I turn to Mrs. Roberts for the roll, please.
Mr. Smeltzer.
Yes.
Mrs. Johns. Yes. Mrs. Conrad Zangmeister.
Yes.
Mr. Hoffman.
Yes.
Mr. Kimmer.
Yes. Motion passed unanimously. 6.9, an agreement, Muskingum Valley ESC, motion to approve the agreement with the Muskingum Valley Educational Service Center for Educational Services as presented.
This is a yearly thing.
Yearly thing. Mr. Belville, entertain a motion.
So moved.
Been moved by Mrs. Johns. I'll second that. Question. The question, I turn to Mrs. Roberts for the roll call, please.
Mrs. Johns. Yes. Mr. Kimmer.
Yes.
Mrs. Conrad Zangmeister.
Yes.
Mr. Hoffman.
Yes.
Mr. Smeltzer.
Yes.
Motion passed unanimously. 6.10, resolution OHSAA. Motion to approve the resolution authorizing 2025-2026 membership in the Ohio High School Athletic Association as presented.
Yearly requirement.
The requirement.
So moved.
Been moved by Mr. Hoffman. Would there be a second?
Second.
Second by Mr. Smeltzer. Question. The question, I turn to Mrs. Roberts for the roll, please.
Mr. Hoffman.
Yes.
Mr. Smeltzer.
Yes.
Mrs. Conrad Zangmeister.
Yes.
Mrs. Johns. Yes. Mr. Kimmer.
Yes. Motion passed unanimously. 6.11, tax budget. Motion to approve the resolution accepting the rates and amounts as set by the Fairfield County Budget Commission and authorizing necessary tax levies and certifying them to the county auditor. Mrs. Roberts.
This is a yearly item. Back in January, the board approved basically what we turned over to the county, and now the county has come back to us and said, okay, these are the tax rates in order to get the tax values that you need. So it's a yearly process.
Thank you, Mrs. Roberts. Take a motion.
So moved.
Okay, been moved by Mrs. Conrad Zangmeister. I'll second that. Question. The question, I turn to Mrs. Roberts for the roll, please.
Mrs. Conrad Zangmeister.
Yes.
Mr. Kimmer.
Yes.
Mr. Hoffman.
Yes.
Mrs. Johns. Yes. Mr. Smeltzer.
Yes.
Motion passed. Unanimously. 6.12, frontline forecast 5 contract fiscal year 2026. A motion to approve the frontline forecast 5 contract for fiscal year 2026. Mrs. Roberts.
This is our forecasting software that we use to do all of our 5-year forecasts. Just to give some reference, this is for a little over $23,000. Last year we were at $22,000, so it's up 5%, which is pretty standard for what we're seeing across the board. But this is for 3 tools within our forecasting tool that we use. So,
Okay, entertain a motion, please. Okay, been moved by Mrs. Johns. Would there be a second?
Second.
Second by Mr. Smeltzer. Question. The question, turn to Mrs. Roberts for the roll, please.
Mrs. Johns. Yes. Mr. Smeltzer.
Yes.
Mrs. Conrad Zangmeister.
Yes.
Mr. Hoffman.
Yes.
Mr. Kimmer.
Yes. Motion passed unanimously. Let's move to 6.13, the addition It was with Heather, Mr.
Holly
Bevel.
Culver, to extend the-
Holly Culver. Okay, stand and leave in absence with Holly Culver. Been moved by Mr. Hoffman, would there be a second?
I'll second.
Second by Mrs. Jones, question. Question, I turn to Mrs. Roberts for the roll, please.
Mr. Hoffman.
Yes.
Mrs. Johns.
Yes.
Mrs. Conrad Zinkmeister.
Yes.
Mr. Kimmer.
Yes.
Mr. Smelter.
Yes.
Motion passed unanimously. Does move us into number 7, executive session. 7.1, motion to adjourn into executive session in accordance with the section 121.22 of the Ohio Revised Code. Would there be any,
No action.
no action coming out of executive session? Thank you. Norvell, Roberts, thank you.
So moved.
Okay, been moved by Mr. Smelter. Would there be, I'll second that. Question. A question, I turn to Mrs. Roberts for the roll, please.
Mr. Smelter.
Yes.
Mr. Kimmer.
Yes.
Mrs. Conrad Zinkmeister.
Yes.
Mr. Hoffman.
Yes.
Mrs. Johns.
Yes.
Okay.